Hello and welcome. My name is Tracy S. Lawrence, and I am the author of the best-selling book, Dementia Sucks. And I am the founder of Grand Family Planning, LLC. I help adult children to be able to cope with healthcare crises in their families. And today I am here to interview my friend, Kat Verdi of Verdi Consulting, LLC. And the reason we're doing this is we want to educate people about the importance of understanding healthcare in the age of COVID. And I met Kat uh, pretty recently, and we were talking about ways that we could work together. And it turned out that Kat's husband is the chief at the fire station where my friend Carlos Drouet works. And those of you who've been following know that I did an interview with Carlos because he had COVID and recovered from it. And we documented his journey, and we talked about the treatments that were involved and all the steps that led up to his COVID journey and how he recovered so well. And so when I met Kat and mentioned Carlos and where he was, and then we put two and two together, and it was like, oh my God. So, and I invited Kat to come talk about her journey with her family, because it wasn't just her husband, but also her daughter, and how she has been coping with their care in the current environment. So, Kat, thank you so much for offering to do this. I think your story will be so important in helping to educate people. So tell us, Kat, first tell us about what you do as a professional.
Sure. Thank you so much, Tracy, for having me. I am a caramelization kind of girl. I believe in karma, and how organically how we met and the commonality that we had is still blowing my mind. Absolutely. You know, we kind of do the same thing. I'm an advocate for caregivers, aging in place adults, and the LGBT elders of the world.
Awesome.
I started my own business because it was time. I realized that our age demographic, the adult children, that by default, we become caregivers, whether we like it or not. If we have an aging parent, for me, I'm the caregiver for three, both of my parents and my disabled brother. So never in a million years did I think that was going to be my life. I got into healthcare by accident, almost a decade now. I have been in placement. I have been in assisted living, independent living, memory care facilities, and rehabilitation. So I sat in all, and also home care. I sat in all of it, and I do believe it was part of my journey. I feel that the big guy said, you need to be versed in this because this is coming to a theater near you. And it so did.
So true.
Oh my gosh, yeah. My uncle is a psychiatrist. I've retrained myself to say he is in the full throes of moderate to advanced dementia. That was a trip in itself. But again, my journey helped me. I became fascinated with the world of dementia and Alzheimer. I dove in, I become credentialed. I'm a certified Alzheimer and dementia care trainer. I partnered up with the Alzheimer's Association. I am a trained facilitator for support groups and a representative for New Jersey for engagement and education. I guess that was what was supposed to happen because of what I'm dealing with in my family. It's my mother's side, so of course I'm terrified that this is coming to a theater near me. My mom, knock on wood, is the glue of her family, but her brother, the psychiatrist, Reynaldo, was the patriarch, and he was the first to be affected. We had some financial exploitation with a family member, non-compliant, kept it from us, but we were putting two and two together. We would call, etc. He would forget, and oh no, that's with age. that's a whole nother series that we can talk about. Um, yeah, my brother is an epileptic since birth. My parents have sheltered him. My background is from South America and Europe. So to care for your own is what you do. Nobody else is going to do it the way you do it. This is our cross to bear. Only to find out that all these other things are happening. It was just crazy. But that is the path that I took. I am thrilled. I'm passionate about it, and I need to educate us, because we're the ones that end up in the hospital with our loved ones. We're the ones that have to have those conversations, difficult conversations sometimes with physicians. So we need to know the gamut. It is a myriad of possibilities, paths, options, and alternatives that we don't talk about as a society.
That's right.
So I left those positions that taught me a ton. I have no regrets about that. And it was time to go on my own and educate. And that's what I've been doing for quite a few years now. But my journey with COVID, it just knocked my socks off. As you said, my husband he's a battalion chief in Jersey City Fire Department. Funny, on Wednesday was his 28th year.
Wow.
On the job. Yes. This past Wednesday, the 12th. And here we are still on sick leave. My journey with COVID started on March 18th. I had gone to March. We were, well, the CDC has definitely called our home, and you just to try to trace it or try to put it somewhere in the map that these folks are trying to figure out anyway.
Sure.
Monday, the 16th, I was at a doctor's appointment with my daughter because she was having stomach issues. So it was determined that she had to get her gallbladder out. So we were doing all the pre-stuff. Yeah, it was.
Oh my God, how old is she?
She just turned 23 last week. Yeah, this was.
Holy cow.
Oh, Tracy, that's what I told you. I'm like, we didn't even scratch the surface of the madness that I had to go endure.
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh, poor thing. Okay.
And the reason I give you the timeline, because again, to give the landscape of what was going on in our healthcare system. We live in Manasquan, New Jersey, born and raised in Jersey City, but we reside in Monmouth County for the we're almost married 30 years, so 27 years. So we do that. We go to the doctor. We then go get an ultrasound because the doctor's like, I'm pretty sure it's going to be the gallbladder, but let's do what we're supposed to do. Wednesday, so we're dealing with life. Like, oh, everything was still normal here in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
On the 18th, I had gone food shopping. She was with me. She comes down. Sean comes home and is like, I have this cough. He always gets a cough at the change of the seasons. He goes, I just want to get it checked out, just to be prudent, because we knew that what was going on. We had no idea what was lurking around the corner, though, with COVID.
Sure.
My daughter comes down and is like, Mom, like in tears. I'm like, what happened to you? She goes, I don't feel right. I don't feel good. I touched her. She didn't feel warm. I said, you know what? Go to the walk-in with Dad. That is what they do. Immediately, by the time from my home to the walking city doctor, I believe it's called, 104 fever. They take her temperature, and it was like a light switch, quite frankly. She did not feel warm when she walked down the stairs. She got in the car with my husband. He gets checked out. They put him on a cough medicine, like, you're good. They checked his lungs. He sounded good. This is now Wednesday, March 18th. They look at her and like, symptoms, high fever. She then got chills, all in the office. She couldn't even like get up. Her bones started hurting her, her joints. All, again, this is how crazy this thing is. They look at my husband and said, we're going to treat her like she has COVID, because she has 3 out of the symptoms. And
right.
Okay, they literally gave her some flu medication, but a little bit higher grade than what we would get at a pharmacy.
Right. Tamiflu?
Yes. Yeah, that, I believe it was that.
Right.
She comes
Incidentally,
home.
I got to stop you for a second. Just, if you're listening, please understand that neither Kat nor I are doctors. And we have no intention of portraying ourselves as doctors. We are relating the information as lay people who have been through a lot of stuff. Okay, so
Absolutely.
I had to put that disclaimer in there. Please understand, you know, we know about medicine from a caregiver perspective, but we're not MDs. Okay, so sorry about that.
No, no, no worries. I concur with my friend Tracy. I am, I am just sharing my journey of COVID in my home, in my family, and that is it. Uh, Alana comes home. That is my daughter, quarantined immediately, and the journey began.
Okay, now to clarify, is this the daughter with the gallbladder issue,
The
or
daughter with the gallbladder. So
okay?
now I have to quarantine her. On Thursday, I have to now call all these doctors' offices that we were sitting so lovely with people. I had to do the right thing because now I'm horrified. Now I'm like, but now the media is also telling us, okay, no St. Patrick's Day parade. We already knew that. Things were starting to shut down. Things were getting real in New Jersey.
Right,
In New
schools are
York,
closing, everything's
yeah,
going, yeah.
yeah. And New York, we were looking at morgues in the middle of the streets. So they were way ahead of us
Yeah.
in that regard, according to the media. So I called, they're very thankful. They're now doing their protocol because
Right.
now the girl that did the ultrasound on the gallbladder, she had to be quarantined, all this craziness. Now it's Friday. Sean goes to the firehouse. In Jersey City, they work 24-hour shifts. So he has to be in by 8 o'clock in the morning on Friday. He gets out on Saturday, 8 o'clock. God willing, no fires or anything that he would still have to attend to.
Right.
He comes home. Now I'm panicked because I have one upstairs quarantined. I have another child. The younger one is 20, Sean Jr. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to take this seriously. Masking, she's in her room, the one bathroom. I'm going in. This child can't even pick up her head. I'm masked and gloved. She's whimpering, which is not my child. And I'm literally climbing the bed to put Tylenol and water and Gatorade and I made some soup and just consomme. She couldn't. At one point, not to be graphic, but I have to be, she didn't even get up to go to the bathroom one day. I was terrified. The lowest the fever would go to is 1.8, 101.8 from 104
And that's with Tylenol.
with Tylenol every 4 hours.
Unbelievable.
Insanity. Sean comes home. Now we have a plan. I said, Sean, when you come home from the firehouse, this is what we're going to do. Because in Jersey City, they're old historical firehouses.
Sure.
Some firehouses have the hoofs of the horses on the ground, on the floor. Hence the Dalmatian story. A lot of people don't know that. The Dalmatian dog is correlated with the firefighters because back in the 1800s, early 1900s, the Dalmatian was the only dog that was not afraid of the horse, and it would nip at its hoofs so the horse would go faster with the barrels of water. It really interesting.
That's fascinating.
Really,
I never knew that.
cool. It's pretty cool. Yes, I learned that many years ago as a firefighter's wife. And yeah, so in Jersey City, some of those they're old buildings.
Mm-hmm.
So the bunk rooms are literally an open area with small cots. So nobody has their own room. So I was already thinking ahead, and especially with my daughter. So I said to Sean, Saturday, this is what we're going to do. Now remember, on the 18th, he was on cough medicine. He finished it on Saturday. So you come home, go through the garage. There will be a plastic bag. Put your things in there. I put everything in the wash. Sachet with a towel, like Baby New Year, right to the bathroom in the basement, and shower again. Got it. We do that. At 11 o'clock in the morning, he does this. He got here a little bit later. There was some delays coming home. And he took a shower and he goes, Kath, just feel my head burning. I'm like, wait a minute. I said, wait a minute. I take his temperature, 103.9.
Oh my God.
I said, Sean, you have a fever. He goes, I really didn't sleep well. I said, okay. In the history of my husband and anybody that knows Sean Verdi, he is a go guy. He's always worked 2 jobs because we've been blessed that the fire department allows that. One of his colleagues that is no longer with us, a great firefighter by the name of Jimmy, would say to him, I'm going to put an anchor in your butt. You got to settle down, kid. When he was a rookie, my husband. So just to give you a little bit of how Sean is, I said, all right, why don't you just rest? I said, don't rest down here. Just let's go to the room. He rolled his eyes. My son comes down. I forget about it. I'm checking on my daughter. And he goes, Mom, is Dad all right? And I'm like, why? What's the matter? He goes, he's passed out.
Oh my God.
Now it's 2:00 in the afternoon. I don't realize this. Like this, shivering, under covers. And now I'm beside myself. I'm like, oh my God, Sean. Oh my God. He gets up. I made a big pot of chicken soup. I remember that because I had to feed Alana. I had to keep her nourished. And he came down. He was fine. He goes, oh, yeah, I got chilly. He goes, I wouldn't say they were chills. I said, yeah, but you were sleeping. I take his temperature again, and it's 101. But he had taken Tylenol. Okay. The whole night comes, we're watching a movie, and I'm watching him. And now I'm noticing his breathing, like his chest is going up a little bit more than normal. And he was sitting.
Mm-hmm.
Good friend, another firefighter calls him, and he's on the phone, and all of a sudden, he starts coughing. Tracy, my son and I look at him. He had to get up and hang up on him to gather himself. Now I'm like, we're done with this. I said, we're done with this. We're going to the doctor tomorrow. That's exactly what we did. Sunday morning, March 22nd, he finished his cough medicine on the 21st. He still had a fever. He tells me he woke up about, I guess it was maybe 4 in, and he felt warm, so he took Tylenol. So I say, you know what? I want them to see you without any Tylenol.
Right.
So
You don't want to mask any symptoms.
Yes.
Yep.
Mask up. We go back to the Medi place that he went on Wednesday with our daughter.
Okay, Kat, I'm sorry. Now, just for context.
Yeah.
How old is Sean?
Sean is 52 years old.
Okay. Underlying conditions?
Nothing. Never smoked
Healthy.
in his
Okay.
life. Oh yeah.
I think it's important for people to know this. Okay.
Oh yes, absolutely. 52-year-old healthy athlete his whole life, amazing shape, a lot of cardio because of the job.
Sure.
The young ones make fun of him and tease him like, yeah, Chief, come on. He goes up, flights of stairs and doesn't have to wait in the landing, because in the gym I would see him. I always call him like the hamster. I'm like, where are you going? Where are you going? So absolutely the bill of health, quite frankly. We go into the mass stop. Thank you, Jesus. So important. The nurse that was there on Wednesday recognized my husband.
Oh, thank God.
That was divinity. I strongly believe that. And says, what's going on? He goes, I'm still coughing. And I'm like, no. He had a coughing fit yesterday. He had now, as a woman, I'm like, we're much more detailed. We can tell the story so differently than they can.
Yes.
And he goes, all right. You know what? He goes, I want to take an x-ray of your lungs. I want to do that. If she didn't do that, I don't know what our story would be. And I really believe that. They leave us in the office. At that point, we were both still able to go, masked up and everything else. Tracy, this nurse came back with the doctor. Their faces were white. And I'm like, what is going on? And she looks at me and goes, Mr. Verdi, you have bilateral pneumonia. She goes, literally pointed right at me. She goes, you need to take him to the ER now. He has COVID. And I'm like, what? My head was spinning. We leave shocked. I'm like, okay. So he goes, I want to go get my toothbrush. I think we were just like in shock. We came back home. By the grace of God, I grabbed a charger. I'm thinking, all right, we're gonna just go to the ER. That's what I'm thinking.
Right.
Jersey Shore Medical was like, and it's gonna sound silly, but to those of us that are in this age group, it was like the scene from E.T. when E.T. was now dying, and the NASA people, remember the tents down the street?
The tents and the tubes and the,
yes.
yeah.
That is what the hospital looked like. Not one car, the main entrance with all these ginormous signs, tape, you gotta go around. I loop around, and it's these white tents with people completely garbed up. And I'm like, what is happening right now? I get out of the car with Sean. He's in shock still, like, what's gonna be okay? They come massive. Who is the patient? 7 feet away. And I'm like, what? He is. He goes, I said, where are you coming from? I said, Medi doctor, whatever. They're like, they called it in. The doctor called it in.
From the urgent care.
Me on my way, like, are you on your way? That's how alarmed they were of what they saw with the lungs.
Sure.
A person came and sashayed Sean. They put a temperature. I never saw him again. There was no hugs, kisses. And I'm like, what's going on? Another nurse comes up to me and says, Miss Verdi, you gotta go home and you gotta quarantine. I'm like, what? His temperature, whatever the hell it was at that point, it was like 103 or whatever it was. And I'm like, she ends up recognizing me from my advocacy. She's like, Kat? And I'm like, yes. I said, please. Now I'm in almost tears because my biggest fear was for him to be in a gurney in a hallway, because what was happening in New York was coming here to Hackensack. In Hackensack, they were full up to, they were busting at the seams. So she says to me, I said, what is going on in the ER? She goes, it's the calm before the storm, in tears. She's in tears looking at me. And I was like, how bad is it? She goes, he's going to be fine, Kat. She goes, they're going to put a room. Don't worry about it. Call this number if you need to. Blah, blah. Sure stuff. By this must have been, give or take, 12:30, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm now driving my car numb because I'm terrified of my daughter. And I'm like, what just happened to this one? By 3, 4 o'clock, he was in a room. I was able to talk to one of the nurses and is like, yeah, he definitely has COVID. He's in isolation. I said, what are his vitals? He's strong. He's strong, but the lungs are compromised. By Wednesday, March 25th, I get the horrific call from the doctors telling me, here's the game plan. We're taking him to ICU. His lungs are just encapsulated with the COVID. It attacked his lungs. He never had a bone hurt. He never had anything. The cough subsided a little bit, but the breathing, he couldn't do that. He said it was like knives in his lungs.
Sure.
So the doctors tell me this. Now keep in mind, I'm talking to residents. I'm talking to nurse practitioners, because again, the floods had opened up at that point. They were up to capacity. They were wild over at that hospital.
Mm.
Thank you. He got into a room. There was room for him in ICU. And now they tell me, we're not saying this, but here's what we have to tell you. We may vent him. We need to make a portal. And I'm like, why a portal? Because sometimes, I do not think this is your husband. He is our healthiest patient right now on this floor. And I'm like, what? He goes, yes. Sometimes when you vent, other things happen. And one of the things that can happen is cardiac arrest.
Right.
So I need to be able to do what I need to do to help him if something else happens. I fell to my knees. I was just like, what is happening? March 25th. My mother-in-law just passed away April 27th. So she wasn't even buried a year yet. And everything, being a firefighter's wife, they just have wonderful. He was firefighter of the year. My mother-in-law got to see that for 2019. There's so many beautiful things that happen. And now I'm like, oh my God, Sean can possibly die. Hands and knees, power of prayer, big believer of that. I said, okay, because we're going in to tell him. So they called me. He had given privileges to me for everything.
Sure.
That's another thing that people need to, have their health proxies in place. And you have to have those copies, millions of them all over the house.
That's right.
Both children should have a copy, because you never know what's going to happen. What if Sean was incapacitated to speak?
Right.
I think because it's so new to us that certain rules and regulations were being bent a little bit, because I am his next of kin.
Sure.
What was horrific, Tracy, is that I do this for a living. I go into hospitals with families in distress and crisis, and they don't know what to do. Like, oh my God, my mom has to now, she broke her hip, she had surgery, she has to rehab. Okay, let's talk about what the next plan is. She can't go home, they're telling me she can't be alone. Okay, maybe assisted living, maybe home care. This is what I do. I sit with families, not being able to sit with him and hear what was going on in this insanity was horrendous. There are no words to explain that. That was just, it was crazy. What kept me going, what kept me sane in hindsight, in August that we're speaking, was Alana, because I still had to keep it together, check on her, medicate her, nourish her, and Tab's on the phone with this one, with Sean.
Right.
So they go in to tell him, and he's like, I'm not getting vented. You're not putting me on a ventilator. I'm not going to do it. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, Sean, wait a minute. Let's again, because we don't know enough about this.
Right.
So they explained to him, like, he goes, your lungs are working, but they weren't working on overtime, miraculously enough. He's still doing okay. But they were pumping him with about 65 liters of oxygen. That is equivalent to a 90-year-old man that has smoked for 50 years. This guy has never smoked. A bill of health. That's how crazy this virus is. It's insanity. So he was in ICU for 5 days. Again, I had to put my thinking cap on. When you called the hospital, it was the most morbid recording ever. They're telling you the plan. You cannot come in. You will not. The only visitors that are allowed is at end of life. This was the recording that you're like, what? Of course, I had a text with the family, his brother, he has an older brother and 2 younger ones. We were in constant contact. No one could be with one another. I was beside myself, but we were all afraid. My brother-in-law has grandchildren. Like, you do have to think twice almost because of this. I couldn't go to the hospital. The day that they called me, I did. That was the first time I remembered like losing it. I wanted to get into my car and drive like an animal, go through the doors and say, I need to be with him.
Right.
And I had better judgment. I'm like, I'm going to probably get arrested. This is not a good plan. And you have to care for Alana and, keeping tabs on myself and my son.
Sure.
What I can tell you now as a caregiver and how I handled it to keep abreast of this. The phones were like Christmas trees from my colleagues that, now we can talk about things. There weren't enough phones, there weren't enough phone lines, and there were not enough people. The computers, it was so overwhelming how quickly people were coming in that were completely positive, and the amount of people that were being treated and the family members calling. So I would put my alarm on every night. This started from March 22nd. I had to be like, okay, how are you going to get, my concern that something was going to happen to him at night. During the day, I could text him. During the day, I spoke to him. Horrendous. He looked awful. We did a little FaceTime. I knew it was really real when this man, who is the rock of our family, positive, hardworking, kind, would text him and say, Sean, how are you? And he would text me back and say, Kat, this is bad. We talk about it now. I think he says it was kind of my way of easing you into the possibility that I was not going to make this.
Right. Now, so he rejected a ventilator.
He absolutely rejected with the power of prayer. I'm in love with the pulmonologist. He got him. He was from Hudson County also. So there's something to be said when you connect with someone and there's something reminiscent of our past, our upbringing. I don't know. And he goes, Sean, come on. I need you to be able, because now they have to move him from the room to the ICU, which now brings this conversation. Like, who are the masterminds that are designing these facilities, these buildings?
Yeah.
Why would we put an ICU on the basement floor or on the 10th floor? Shouldn't we have ICUs maybe on each floor in the event there's an emergency? I don't know. I'm not an architect, but now that I went through this, so there was another nurse that connected with him, and he goes, look, let me put this mask. Now, keep in mind, this is the lower grade oxygen. He's
Sure.
on all this oxyflow. He's on tremendous amounts of oxygen to help him breathe.
Sure.
And for him to say this to me, I lost my mind with this. I mean, this guy, it climbs. He's not afraid of heights, confinement. I'm very moved with some of the guys that are under him and have been with him for many years in the department. And they're like, he's the best. He always kept us safe. He knows his stuff. So to hear him say that he ripped a mask off because he felt claustrophobic, he couldn't breathe, I wanted to throw myself on the floor. I was like, what is happening? That's how real this was for him.
Sure.
By the grace of God, the doctor comes in, the nurse, he goes, you can do this. He goes, and Sean, again, firefighter, goes, I want you to tell me about how many feet it is where I'm going, because I can gauge myself to control my breathing, just like on the job, I guess. If you know that your Scott is running low and you still have to climb a floor or two or whatever it is to get out, I guess that's how you program it.
Sure.
You know, you in your mind. So the nurse goes, yep. Sure enough, the doctor goes, Sean, you're my strongest guy. We can do this. We got to get you in ICU, because I'm not going to vent you. Because, but I just need to, you're in rough shape right now. You really are. Your lungs are compromised. God, my mother-in-law praying to everyone. He did it. He had the nurse tell him how long, how many steps, how many yards, however she said it to him. And he got himself together and he told me, because now I was terrified I was going to get it. Because I'm like, now that's going through my house. And he goes, Kat, he goes, I'm telling you right now. He talked to me like a coach, and he's done that a couple of times in my life, which I love him for it. At the moment, I'm like, I'm going to pick your eyeballs like olives. But he goes, if you get this, he goes, this is also mental. He goes, you have to be strong. It hurts. It's a lot of pain. You don't know which way is up because you don't have anybody here. He goes, but if you get this, Kat, and you end up in the hospital, he goes, you have to be strong, mentally strong. So I'm like, okay, he's preparing me. God, thank you. I didn't get anything. They make it to the ICU, and now it's just a carousel of doctors. And this is where you have to advocate. This is where you have to know who your nurse is. Know that their timing is usually from 7 to 7 at night. Then there's a changing of the guard. So don't call at 7 o'clock. That's
Right.
when you're getting, they're getting the rundowns of this one. This is what's happening to this one. Now, granted, this is a whole COVID wing, so nothing crazy, but COVID was happening. So I would literally regulate my phone at 9 o'clock, at midnight, and at about 4 in the morning, I would call the nurses. When I called in the middle of the night, I got the most wonderful response, because I always prayed for them. I thanked them, and they were much more calmer to talk and to give me everything that I needed, because
Sure.
I do have a nurse in my family. So I would run everything through my colleagues and my family. I'm not a nurse, but I knew that the oxygen, he dropped to 83%, which is horrific. Horrific.
Yeah.
That is horrific. By the grace of God, Sean is now out April 3rd. Okay.
Now, if you wouldn't mind, we've talked about treatments,
Yes.
and so he was not ventilated. He was given oxygen, and what kind of medications?
Immediately from day one, when he got into the room on March 22nd, they pumped him with zinc, Zithro, and chloroquine.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately. That is what they had him pumped. I too, when speaking to the nurses, I was taking zinc. I was taking vitamin C like a crazy. And there was something else that sulfur maybe, that was keeping your immune system nice and open. And again, we were definitely quarantining. So April 3rd comes, I pick him up, they wheel him out. The hospital is still shut down. You're on phones. Okay, what car are you? Somebody garbed comes up. He's masked. He's this big. It was unbelievable. We get him in the car. I get him in the car, and back home, another quarantine for 14 days. Now we had we had to stagger one another, because Alana, now she's feeling much better. I would tell you by April 1st. That's how out of commission this child was. That child didn't come out of her room for 1 month, because we were so afraid of my son and myself getting it. and then
Sure.
dad came home. So
And
April
was she being treated with
at
medications?
home, no, just what they gave us, and that's it, because her symptoms were not respiratory. She was more of the exasperated flu, typical flu that we get, but she couldn't even lift her head. Like she was, her head, her body ached, no cough. It was just crazy. The faces that this thing has is just a lot. It's just a lot, the faces that it has.
Yeah.
So April 3rd, I'm like, what do we do? What's the follow-up? Nothing, because nobody was ready for it. All I know is that we have to go see the pulmonologist. You now have a specialist, a pulmonologist, and they need to assess you as to how much scar tissue, what was left behind. Okay,
Right.
so let's call the pulmonologist. From April, literally every week I would call, because they were on call, but that entire practice was still at the front line in the hospital. So they weren't taking any patients. They couldn't. So that's how much the landscape of what we know completely changed. I would call every week and said, we'll let you know when we're I said, well, where is he in the in the pecking order? Because I'm sure that the pulmonologists have patients that have cancer,
Sure.
that have been with them way before this whole thing happened. And they're like, we are aware of that. We are making a separate, if you will. We can't call your husband a new patient because he was treated and helped in the hospital. So we do have to see those folks first at some point. I'm not going to bore you with all the craziness. Every week I did my work diligently, and we got a telehealth call on June 15th from April.
Wow.
Yeah, from April. That is where the doctor, which again, no disrespect to him, I really like him. He's very thorough. There wasn't like, okay, 1, 2, 3, I can only see a patient every 3 minutes. No, we were on for a while, and he just looked into the camera, and we were on our computer, and he goes, Sean, I don't know how else to say this, but you're a miracle. When I'm looking at how your lungs are, and I'm going to share it when you come into my office, he goes, you're a miracle. You're a miracle. That is what he told him. So from June 15th, that was the telehealth. We finally got into the pulmonologist. I could not go in, and I was crazy because I do believe 2 extra sets of eyes and ears make a world of a difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
World of a difference. You know, sometimes you can catch things that maybe the patient didn't.
Yeah.
You can raise your hand and say, wait, can you explain that to me?
You're going to listen in a way that your husband is not going to.
Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely. As advocates, absolutely. So I couldn't go in, but I was like, I will be on FaceTime. And the doctor was completely great with it. Just to back up a little bit, the protocol is that you were supposed to get tested before you were discharged to see if you tested negative. That protocol went out the window. And I think every hospital was different depending on the amount of people they were treating and what was the census of the hospital.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons you had a quarantine and so forth. So when he went just in July, thorough examination, stairs, a bunch of stuff, he failed. He failed the walking part. His oxygen dropped. And what I love about this doctor is that he got what Sean did for a living. You cannot be a cookie cutter. The way it attacked him, the way it attacked my daughter, the way it attacked other Carlos, obviously this thing has many faces, and we were all different.
Yep.
What I loved is when he says to Sean, he goes, you are in the perfect environment. You're in a t-shirt and shorts in my air-conditioned building.
Right.
And your oxygen dropped.
Right.
Your conditions are heat, fire, and smoke, plus equipment,
Right.
plus stairs.
Yeah.
So I would not be doing my due diligence with you, my patient, if I said, you're ready to go back. You look great. I can't deny that your lungs look good, but here's the piece we're not getting. Why did you plummet? Because we don't know enough about this virus.
Right.
So I want to share with you, I have it right here, Tracy. This was the notebook. I don't know if you can see it.
Yep.
I grabbed a notebook, and this was every single day, the vitals I would get. You have to. What medications is he on? Because there is room for error, and we've seen it.
Absolutely.
Just the way we were formatted here in the U.S. with the way the nursing, the doctor, the resident doctor, the specialist doctor, the observing doctor. You got to know who the heck you're talking to. You have to write down names. You have to know what date, what time. It's all very important. Go over the medication again, because as a frontline worker, I can't imagine what pandemonium was going on in those floors. Sean just remembers they would change. They couldn't go with the guard that they had in Sean's room to the next guy.
Right.
They had to change. So you're tired. You're still dealing with your family. I am not casting a bad stone. Errors can happen. We're human.
Sure.
But that is what, as caregivers, as advocates for our loved ones, that's your homework. You better get a notebook and a pen and
Document everything.
Document everything.
Don't expect to remember.
And don't
in
expect
your
to
case,
remember.
yeah, in your case, you're managing not just your husband but your daughter, and and your own situation, and you have a son as well.
Yes.
Right. And even if you're, so there's so much going on. If you're not documenting, you're running the risk of getting things confused, and you're also helping the doctors to do their job better, because it's just your input is invaluable, and people need to understand this. The advocacy piece is enormous, and you don't have to be a doctor, but you do have to be a good note taker. You do have to be confident, and having good notes will help keep you confident, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's also your decorum. If you're
Mhm.
going to come at someone, that's all, we're not in their shoes. Our loved ones are with them in their shoes.
Right.
And I think that was, if you treat people with respect, you will be respected back. And I thank you for saying that. The fact we are helping them, because you're refreshing their memory, because Sean wasn't their only patient. They had one nurse to 5 patients at that time.
Absolutely. It is, it's a pandemonium. It's they're and they're getting emotional also.
Absolutely.
Especially, you got so many patients in the ICU, and you're watching people die, and they're put in a position of having to be proxy for the families. They know that so many of these people aren't going to make it, and that the last face they're going to see is them. The pressure, the emotion, the heartache behind all of that. I mean, we're all, you can say, all right, as a medical professional, you develop certain, walls and boundaries, and, you're better able to cope. In these kinds of conditions, that kind of stuff, no one's prepared for the kind of intensity that these people were subjected to. So, and when you're under that kind of pressure, to be able to have someone like yourself, to be able to have a family advocate who can say to them, wait a minute, what did you just say? Because according to my notes yesterday, you told me this.
Exactly.
That can be life-saving information, and it isn't just good for you, and it isn't just good for your loved one, but it's also good for them, because you're saving them from making a catastrophic error.
And we're not there to be with them. That I think was the hardest part, is that, would I take a notebook even if I would have been able to go into the hospital? Yeah, that's what I do,
Mm-hmm.
But what was interesting too, I think, because I showed them the respect that they deserved.
Mm-hmm.
To your point, it was also very mental for them, because usually when someone is not doing well and it's the writing's on the wall that this person is going to pass. That's when family sees this. A lot of these amazing nurses couldn't, because of their own conscience, because of their intestinal fortitude, their integrity, the oath that they took, could not let somebody leave this world without at least being there.
Right. Right.
And so I get choked up a little bit because I had that conversation. I became very friendly. Like, I knew their rotation. And they're like, Mrs. Very Cat. I said, call me Cat. I said, I promise you when this is over, and I do mean this, I want to have something. I've been in contact with the hospital. I said, I need, yes, you saved my husband. You treated him correctly with medications. I said, but I need to speak on behalf of what they did for us, the family members, or for me.
Right.
They were my eyes and ears. And they were my eyes and ears. And this needs to be shared, because they took an oath to help others. But this COVID threw such a curveball at everyone that they were on double time. They were caring for the sick and also being compassionate, empathetic, and the eyes and ears for us, the family that couldn't be there.
Sure. And as human beings, they had to have their own worries about potentially contracting this too.
Absolutely.
And many frontline workers have.
I think that the landscape has completely changed. My son just went to the doctor yesterday, and you have to call in, then they get you into the room. Everything has changed. How you go visit the doctor, even the follow-up.
Sure.
When I asked, I said, so what do we do? What happens? And they're like, well, if an emergency were to occur, if he were to start coughing, anything unusual, you got to bring him back to the emergency room.
How is Sean doing now? How is your daughter's name is?
Alana.
Alana. How are Sean and Alana doing now?
Alana, after this whole bout, like I said, her journey started March 18th. Honestly, I would say April 20th, the 25th, almost going into May, right before Mother's Day, is when I saw her back. She was still very fatigued, but she's a 22-year-old kid. She just turned 23. And she's back, definitely.
Awesome.
Sean, definitely, and this is what worries me, the facade looks great. He looks amazing. He rides his bike, he jumps in rope in the backyard, he does push-ups, he looks great. What concerns me is what's going on inside. The outside looks all good, and
Right.
There's still some unknown variables.
Right. His oxygen is still
Not when we're doing stuff here, but with the test that the pulmonologist gave him, it plummeted.
Right.
Not it was from 100 to 99. I went to 93. But again, I thank him, because he's like, this is a perfect element. This is not your element.
Right. And have his lungs been scanned?
Yeah. The lungs look clear. Everything looks good. But I think the doctor's also very concerned of, like, and let's be honest, there's liability stuff that's probably looming
Sure.
over his head.
Sure.
This is not a typical patient. You're going to let this guy go to fight fires, to save people, smoke, chemicals,
the worst possible.
It's a different career, if you will. And he
Sure.
said that to me. He goes, Sean, if you were a financial planner and you're pushing a pencil, I'd say you're good to go, buddy. We're going to keep an eye on this.
Right.
But because of what you do, the nature of what you do, and he made a great point. He goes, do you ever physically go into the fires? And he goes, not anymore, because I'm a chief, but my captain, I'm keeping abreast of what's going on at the physical fire, if there is a fire.
Right.
Is there any possibility that you would save a person? And this melted my heart, because again, it's me hearing him in his work mode.
Sure.
He goes, absolutely, I will run into a building if one of my guys are in distress, because he gets all that on, the walkie-talkies and all that good stuff.
Sure.
And to hear him say that, it's the passion that he has for the job he's been doing for 28 years.
Sure.
And that's when the doctor looked at him and he goes, I can't let you go. You went down to 93. I can't. He goes, you're in a t-shirt and shorts. He goes, and what would you do if you had to do that? He goes, I had to put my turnout gear. That's another 50 to 60 pounds. And so he's doing better. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that hopefully we'll get a better diagnosis or assessment. He goes on the 28th, so I'm taking prayers for sure.
Okay.
But I'm
I'm
cautious.
putting him out for you, girlfriend.
Thank you. But I'm not going to lie to you. I'm a little nervous because,
I don't blame you.
what if, and I asked him that. I said, and then I love the doctor is so open and he speaks to both of us. I said, let me ask you a question. Not that you have a crystal ball, but let's say Sean is in a situation that he starts coughing. Let's say he ingests some kind of smoke. Is there a possibility that his lungs couldn't take it? Like if you and I smell something pungent, naturally the body, you start coughing to get it out of
Right.
the body, get it out. And he goes, Kat, he goes, that's a great question. He goes, I don't have the answer for you. We don't know enough.
Right.
It looks good, but I don't know. I said, well, can a lung collapse? He goes, yes to all of the above. I don't have, like you said, Kat, I don't have a crystal ball and I don't. And he goes, and that's what I can't let him go back in. That could be an indicator.
Sure.
That you're doing your laps in an office in the most pleasant conditions of all. And you went down, your oxygen level went down.
Yeah.
So, we're definitely having personal conversations here. Like, listen, you're still doing it on your terms. He was going to retire in 2 years, but that's his wife talking. I think when you have that camaraderie and he's, like I said, well beloved, he loved his guys. He's a Jersey City guy. There's a lot that I think they go through anyway when they retire. Yeah. And he's 52. Was he going to retire at 54? Yeah. Of course I rationalize it. I'm like, Sean, you know what, but you're doing it on your terms. And he goes, I'm kind of not. I said, yeah, but it's COVID that's making you do this. And you still can do the things that you want to do. God forbid something happens and now we're rolling around an oxygen tank. And that's the best scenario. God forbid he collapses and never gets up, So I am taking prayers. I'm being very, very positive. But I'm not going to lie to you. I think that this thing has too many faces. Another firefighter did not end up in the hospital. I wanted to share with this in the beginning. When all of this happened, again, and his rank and his tenure in Jersey City kid that he is, they tagged him the first and the worst. And it was hard for them to believe. He made it real. I was in constant contact with the chief of the department, who's a personal friend. We all grew up together, and that's what sobered the department. Like, wait a minute, Chief Verdi is in the hospital 13 days. What? I mean, hysterics a few times when things were bad.
Sure.
It was a lot, but it's real. And one of the guys that did not end up in the hospital, that was more like my daughter's symptoms, with coughing. He's having heart issues now, 51 years of age. So a lot remains to be seen, but I am staying positive. And thank you for letting me share this story of the timeline, and the landscape has changed. You have to be an advocate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Kat, thank you so much for sharing your story. I know that there will be a lot of knowledge to be gleaned. I will be sharing this, and I know you will too.
Yeah.
And please, folks, know that we're putting this out to you so that you'll have a more complete picture of what's going on in the world right now, because unfortunately we live in a time when the news is very incomplete, and some of it is mighty misleading. So this is actual information from someone who's really been through this, and we put this out with affection and a desire to educate and enlighten. And we sincerely hope that you've enjoyed watching this. And if you'd like to get in touch with either of us, Kat, you want to tell people how to get in touch with you?
Sure. My website is www.verdi, VERDI, consultingllc.com. There's a little pop-up. You can put your question or just contact me directly, a little quick note, and I'm pretty good at getting back at people. And for sure, any questions I'd be more than happy to answer. But we are here to empower and to learn from one another.
Absolutely. And of course, if you want to get in touch with me, TracySLawrence.com. It's easy. And you can just leave me a note on the website. There's a contact section. So thanks so much again for watching and listening. Share with your friends if you think that they might be able to get something out of it. And be well, be healthy, and see you again.
Bye, everyone.